From Washington, the McLaughlin Group, the American original. For over 2 decades, the sharpest minds, best sources, hardest talk.
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
Somewhere in America, there's a doctor who can peer into the future. There's a nurse who can access in an instant every patient's past. And because the whole hospital's working together, there's a family who can breathe easy right now. Somewhere in America, we've already answered some of the nation's toughest healthcare questions. And the over 60,000 people of Siemens are ready to do it again. Siemens answers.
Investing takes perspective. It comes from navigating up and down markets for 60 years, spotting opportunities at home and abroad. Global investing from Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective.
Issue 1, Obama shakeout.
Shake, rattle, and roll. I said shake, rattle, and roll. I said shake, rattle, and roll. I said shake, rattle, and roll.
President Obama is shaking out his staff. Number 1 economic advisor Larry Summers is leaving his post after a little more than a year and a half. Dr. Summers is the director of Mr. Obama's National Economic Council. Summers was the chief architect of the United States response to the global financial crisis that is still hurting the U.S. And last year's $787 billion stimulus program was largely Summers' idea, and he defended it.
I think this stimulus has had a significant impact. Tens of thousands of teachers and cops across the country, $53 billion delivered to American families, 3,000 projects underway. That the calculation suggests that its impact is only going to increase, that we're also seeing 200,000 mortgages have already been relieved. It's going to be 500,000 by November 1st. So I think we're on the right track.
Dr. Summers is the third high-profile member of President Obama's economic team to quit before the end of the president's first 2 years in office. Budget Director Peter Orszag was the first to leave in July. Christina Roma, chair of the Council of Economic Advisors, was next. The White House is also expecting Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel to leave the White House to run for mayor of Chicago. If Rahm Emanuel leaves, he will be the fourth of President Obama's closest advisors to have left since July. Question: after 20 months, is this presidential staff turnover normal, Pat Buchanan?
This is not terribly unusual if you got a presidency in a little bit of trouble, John. When you came into the White House, 71, John Connally came in at Treasury, Dave Kennedy was out, Nixon closed the gold window, let the dollar float. He sent Arthur Burns to the Federal Reserve. They gunned the money supply, two $23 billion deficits, and he won 49 states. That was enormously dramatic in terms of a change. This is nothing like that. I mean, Rahm is going out there because there's an opening for mayor's office, and secondly, because he's really been hammered and they've had a bad time. But I don't think this is extraordinarily unusual. I don't see any signs of panic
Nixon had a Vietnam War on his hands.
Well, Nixon, our election was somewhat disappointing, and he took that big move, took out his, and John Connally was Lyndon Johnson's man, the governor of Texas, who had taken Texas away from him and moved him into Treasury. That is a big.
How long did Connally serve?
2 years until he went out and became the chairman.
Well, this is not even 2 years. It's a year and a half.
No, he served for 2 years, then became chairman of Democrats for Nixon.
It's not unusual at the midway point, and that we're getting to the midway point, to have a changing of the top personalities of burnout jobs. What is a little unusual here is that they're announcing it before the midterms, so that the exit after the midterms won't look necessarily tied to the disaster if a disaster unfolds. I must say, nobody's going to miss Larry Summers. He was part of the culture that created the crisis that we had, and I don't think that he ever had much credibility, certainly with the left of the party and with ordinary people, and the prescriptions that he put in place basically rescued Wall Street and the banks, but didn't do much for average folks.
Is that the culture you're talking about?
Yes, and Timothy Geithner, who is now remains the thin reed that we're all leaning on, I think at one point said we saved the economy, but we lost the American people, and he's right about that.
Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be back.
What do you think of this question?
Yeah, I don't think it's unusual at all. Larry Summers allegedly is leaving because he doesn't want to give up his tenure at Harvard. So, they said he will serve through the end of the year. We are getting closer to the midterm, the midpoint of the president's first term in office, and this is what you see happen. People leave, and quite frankly, the president needs people like Larry Summers to leave. He has been terribly unpopular, as Eleanor said. The American public, whether we are talking about small businesses, big business, the middle class, or people who live in underserved communities, are very, very unhappy with the state of the economy. Many people blame that on Larry Summers. Many people blame it on the president being tone deaf, but this is a time, if you're going to clean house, do it now and do it before disaster strikes in November.
Do you think if unemployment were down around 6%, these people would be leaving?
Well,
in other words, do we have an economy now that would justify their staying from that point of view of their personal careers?
No, look, Larry Summers advocated a much larger stimulus package than the $800 billion. He advocated $1.3 trillion, as did Christina Romer. Okay, that was not accepted politically. That was not Larry Summers' fault. Larry Summers is a brilliant macroeconomics, maybe the best one in the country. And it is unfair to look at what happened to that stimulus program, which was politicized to such an extraordinary degree, both by the Congress and by the White House. That's why that program was not nearly as effective as it should have been. As far as Rahm Emanuel, there is clearly going to be an opportunity that nobody expected, which is that Mayor Daley, who had been the mayor of Chicago for 20 years, fulfilling a family obligation, of course. He announced he's going to resign.
Summers just got back from a trip to Beijing, and he saw Wen Biao over there, Wen Jiabao, and he tried to get Wen Jiabao to monetize his money the proper way, instead of what he's doing with it. Mm-hmm. And that didn't work. Do you think there's any connection between that failure to get Wen Jiabao aboard? In fact, the president himself met with him. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, the main issue here, as far as we are concerned, the United States economy is concerned, is that the yen is kept at an artificially low level.
What does that do to us?
Okay, and what that means is their exports are more competitive and our exports are less competitive in China. Mm-hmm. So what that means to us is that we have fewer jobs. We have fewer manufactured goods manufactured at home because they can do it more cheaply. That's not the only reason, by the way, why we're having trouble.
There's also a flight of business over to China to produce. And that yields a big return on their money.
That's not the only reason. The other reason, frankly, is that the Chinese, look, just to pick one example, okay, we were the first country to manufacture computers. There are 166,000 people who work in the computer industry today in the United States. There are 1.5 million of them who work in Asia. We've lost the ability to scale up. That has just a minute.
Hold on.
That has nothing to do with the yen or.
I want to know about this conversation that took place between the president, which is written up by Sanger in Friday's New York Times, by the way, very well, and I noticed he got it and he put it on the front
Obama
page.
is saying it's the renminbi, the Chinese currency.
He's saying this to
He's saying, in effect, look, you got to let your currency float and rise up in value because you're sucking our industry, our jobs, our technology out. We're running a trade deficit with you, the biggest in the world. And if you don't do it, the Congress of the United States is going to put tariffs on Chinese goods.
What do you think of that action?
That should have been done 20 years ago.
Well,
all right. In other words, we can take some action against you that you're not going to like.
Wait a minute. The last thing you want to have is a trade war.
My turn now. You take that action and you invite a response back. But to get back to the beginning topic here about the next Treasury Secretary, this is an opportunity for the president. This is not only somebody, not Treasury Secretary, it's actually advisor. Right. We still have Geithner. But it's an opportunity also to send the signal to the world about attitudes about international economics. It's not just about putting people back to work. So Summers, fairly or unfairly, is seen as a symbol of policies that didn't go far enough and aren't really working. So who you put in place sends signals to not only to this nation but to the world.
John, the United States,
leaning heavily on Wen Jiabao, or do you?
Look, the United States appears as if any day now we are going to become a wholly owned subsidiary of China. This is very important. The president really has to think very closely about how what China does with its dollar affects our economy, all in conjunction with all of the people, all of his economic advisors who have left the White House. He's got to get good people in there and turn this economy around on an international level as well as
China has a long way to go before they're a threat to the United States. They affect our trade balances. They affect some of our manufacturing jobs. Their per capita income is $6,000. Ours is $46,000.
Wait a minute. Earlier on this program, I read a piece from the front page of the Financial Times about Jeffrey Immelt. Jeffrey Immelt said flat out he thought that China did not want anyone else to succeed. Well, it was a damning quote. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that very well. I'm not sure that is the case. Look, the Chinese are very, shall we say, focused on their own economic well-being, which is perfectly understandable.
But that depends upon their competition with the other. John, if the other does not succeed, they go up.
John,
that's right.
That
is correct.
They're economic nationalists. They are, everything they do is for China. They hold the value of their currency down because it sucks jobs and plants into China.
We are agreed that Summers' job, the job in itself, is an important job, is it not? He's head of the the economic advisors to the president.
Yeah.
Who's going to take his place?
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, I hope it's some guy with real world experience and not simply academic experience.
You think Jeffrey Immelt will take his place?
I don't think Jeffrey Immelt would, but somebody like Jeffrey Immelt would be the right person.
The names they're floating are CEO types, and also Laura Tyson, who was in the Clinton White House.
Free trader. Perfect.
Immelt was the one that spoke to the predatory practices of China. Why don't they put him in there?
Well, who knows? Somebody like that.
He might not want the job. They might offer it to him. He might not want the job. He's got a great. I don't know who. I have absolutely.
He couldn't handle the higher pay. In the White. Let me just say one thing. Okay, one of the signals they have to send is not to China; it's to the American business community, and therefore I think it would be useful if they found an American businessman who had a good sense of macroeconomic policy. I'll give you an example. I mean, Bob Rubin was a perfect example of somebody who could bring both policy and an understanding of it. I don't know that he would do it. He has his own problems in terms of serving at this point.
Would you take the job?
Would I take the job? Yeah. I'd have to check the salary.
Some people.
When have you been hurting?
No. That's a serious job and would be a very interesting job. It's not for me.
All right, well, think about it on your flight home tonight in your own plane. I think Summers would be. I think. What am I trying to say? I think Immelt would be great to replace Summers. Yeah. Issue 2: Independence rule.
2009 was the year of being angry. 2010 is the year of voters at the polls. So I think we're going to see a lot of independents mobilized. We've seen a lot of them through the Tea Party, through other sources. Get out and get active.
Almost 2 out of 5 voters today say that they are neither Democrat nor Republican. They are independent. This is no small number. It could shake up the midterm elections just 5 weeks away. 52% of independents voted for Obama in the 2008 election. Now they appear to be changing their tune. The respected pollster Douglas Schoen conducted a poll of independent voters, which found that independents are now tilting towards the GOP. 50% Republican, 25% Democrat. The same poll says that 48% of independent voters view the Tea Party positively. The Wall Street Journal, the Los Angeles Times, and Politico, among others, reported on the poll, which was underwritten by the Independent Women's Voice, a sister organization of the Independent Women's Forum. Did I get that right, Michelle?
You got it right.
The Voice is the sister organization to the Forum.
Absolutely.
And you're head of the Independent Women's Forum.
I'm head of the Independent Women's Forum. Heather Higgins heads the Independent Women's Voice. Let me tell you why we have independents. I will tell you what our poll told us. 1,000 likely voters have told us that whether you look at Democrats or Republicans, this is a beauty contest and all of the contestants are ugly. They don't like Democrats, they don't like Republicans, and for that reason, people are unaffiliated.
I thought they liked the Republicans.
They are leaning Republican. They are leaning Republican. They are leaning Republican despite the fact that they don't like Republicans.
What does that mean, 60-40 pro-Republican?
They are leaning Republicans in large numbers simply because they feel that the Democratic Party, it is over 50%.
John, every independent just about is a former Republican or a former Democrat. Scott Brown won because all those former Democrats were sick of their party, and our guys are winning now because they're sick of the Democratic Party. They were sick of the Republicans in 2008. This rise of the independents is a vote against both national parties,
Absolutely.
both of which have failed the country in that they can't balance our budget, win our wars, or basically secure our borders.
Right, the independents or decline to state are the biggest block of voters in the country.
And
Obama won them in 2008, and now they're leaning Republican, many for the same reason.
Why have they turned against Obama?
Because they're mostly angry at the party in power, but they don't like the Republicans. And so
They
the
do.
challenge for Obama and the
they like
Democrats is
bailouts?
to make this...
They don't like bailouts.
They would
Do
like
the
bailouts
stimulus-
if it were
do
for
they-
them.
Do they like
No.
the stimulus package?
No.
No, they
No,
don't
they
like
don't
any of
They
the
want
government
they want you to cut
They
taxes. They
don't-
want you to cut spending.
Right.
They do not like this new proposed, stimulus package. They're against
but
all
don't-
of
but
it.
don't touch their Medicare
they're
or
against,
Social
oh no,
Security.
they're against the health care program that was passed by
Absolutely.
incredible
Obamacare.
numbers. They are basically
Why?
opposed
Why?
because they think it's going to raise the costs of
What,
health care.
what about the fact that it imperates? It
imperates.
imperates. In other words, it obliges you to have health insurance.
Individual mandate?
I don't.
A mandate, right? What about the mandate?
Libertarians,
Take a position on the mandate?
libertarians are dead against that.
The position is that what
was a
independents are
great
telling
word,
us
by
is
the
that we want to make that they want to make their own decisions. They don't want government making decisions for them. It is
Well,
just as much
with
value
healthcare-
based as it is
Healthcare,
dealing with the
it's
economy.
a question of whether the insurance companies make your decisions, or many of the benefits have gone into effect this week. You can't get kicked off of your health care plan if you have a
the insurance
pre-existing
companies seem to be
condition.
finding
There are
a way
some good
around
things.
that.
And anything about deficit spending and the ruinous impact of that, and
No.
particularly on your voting
No,
strength.
because I'm recalling all the time you made that an issue when George W. Bush was in power. I don't remember it ever coming up, John.
Oh,
And
I think I
the
spoke about
ruinous
that
stuff-
almost every other week, didn't I, Pat? Exit question on a political probability scale, 0 to 10. 0 meaning no likelihood whatsoever, 10 meaning metaphysical certitude. What is the likelihood that the Democrats will win back a majority of independents? Now they're favoring Republicans by election day. 0 to 10.
It's minus 473 degrees, which is absolute zero, where everything can't move,
Really?
John. They're not going to get back the independents. It's ridiculous.
I don't think they're going to get back a majority of the independents, but we live in such a tumultuous political climate, I'm going to give them a 3.
0. It's not happening, at least not by November.
Really?
0.
Yeah, certainly not happening by November, and if anything, it's going to get worse between now and the election.
That's too cruel a figure. I will say 1. Issue 3, Pentagon feather bedding. We spend too much on national defense, nearly $700 billion. That's what Secretary of Defense Robert Gates believes and says. He wants to slash $100 billion from the defense budget over 5 years. The current defense budget is almost 1/5 of the total U.S. budget, and the total U.S. budget is $3.5 trillion.
The culture of endless money that has taken hold must be replaced by a culture of savings and restraint.
Secretary Gates is practicing what he preaches. He said that last year the department made more than 30 tough choices, canceling or curtailing major weapons systems that were either performing poorly or in excess to real-world needs, about $330 billion worth. Besides hardware heavy, the Pentagon is also personnel heavy, what Gates calls brass creep. Generals and admirals, nearly 1,000 of them. Deputy Assistant Secretaries of Defense, 530. In 1960, there were 78. As for musicians in the military, there are more U.S. military band members than our 6,000 Foreign Service officers. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Michael Mullen, concurs with Secretary Gates on cutbacks.
One of the things that Secretary Gates is addressing, and I think rightfully so, is the whole issue of what he calls brass creep, and over the last decade. And I think, again, that's something that we need to look at, not just on the military side. There's a big civilian part of the creep which has occurred as well.
Question, why are Mullen and Gates singing the praises of frugality? I ask you one. Didn't you serve on some commission with regard to military spending?
Yes, I was on the Defense Administration Board, and in fact, we looked at the management, the Defense Management Board.
Under Rummy?
Yeah, under Rumsfeld, and he did a very good job of trying to get costs under control. The politics of it are very difficult because every base, extra base, we make our own glasses for the military.
The states figure in this,
the states
too.
And the congressmen and the senators, they all focus on this. Is patronage, and we are now at a point where you can't afford it. There's also extra military equipment that we don't need that is, in a sense, forced upon us by the states where they manufacture it. So there's a huge amount of waste.
Congress is clawing at the budget of the Pentagon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, John, you know where you get the money?
Individuals. What?
You got 700 to 1,000 foreign bases. What's going to happen? American troops are going to start coming home from Korea and Okinawa and Northern Europe, and quite frankly, because we can't afford it, and the other cost is these 2 wars we've got going. And eventually, this whole thing
Pat,
is
the
coming
Iraq
down.
war is winding down. Secondly, Afghanistan has a terminal date on it. This flows into a pattern.
What I'm saying
time
is,
to do it.
what is
We
coming,
can decrease the size
I agree
of the
with you, they
military.
ought to do it. The empire is coming down.
Well, but the money that fuels the empire is not coming down. Secretary Gates has taken some, I think, bold stands here, trying to chip away at the gold-plated military culture and some of these weapon systems that are very expensive and have no relation to modern warfare. But you know, Dwight Eisenhower, who had a lot more credibility than a defense secretary, although I think Gates is a class act, Eisenhower couldn't tame the military-industrial complex, and I think the chances of any of these cuts going through, especially with the new Republican Congress, are minimal.
Michelle, do you think that there's any other factor in play here? For example, what is the military primarily concerned about? They're primarily concerned about terrorism, are they not?
Well, it depends on who the president is. I mean, they are dealing with the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, with military bases all over the world. I think that what Gates is suggesting here is important, but we also want to make sure that we don't put the country in a position where our armed forces are in any type of danger whatsoever.
Is China back?
Well, you talk about modern warfare, for example. A report said that in 2001, the people in Afghanistan sent out a request for horse feed. There was a time where people said we're in modern warfare. We don't need horses. We don't need a cavalry. Well, our men in Afghanistan are taking the war to the Afghans and trying to protect people on horses. You've got to be careful.
Is China back in play here, namely the South China Sea?
Yeah, China is back in play in terms of naval power, but Dwight Eisenhower, whom you mentioned, told Jack Kennedy, bring the troops home, all of them from Europe, 300,000. Otherwise, you'll have dependencies.
That's what we got. Also warn again.
Military-industrial complex.
The military-industrial complex means there's money to be made out there. Issue 4, Velma and Barack. The scene, a Washington, D.C. town hall meeting held Monday of this week. President Obama takes questions from the audience. A remarkable exchange occurs.
I am a chief financial officer for a veteran service organization, AMVETS, here in Washington. I'm also a mother. I'm a wife. I'm an American veteran, and I'm one of your middle-class Americans. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted of defending you, defending your administration, defending the mantle of change that I voted for, and deeply disappointed with where we are right now. I've been told that I voted for a man who said he was going to change things in a meaningful way for the middle class. I'm one of those people, and I'm waiting, sir. I'm waiting. I don't feel it yet. And I thought, while it wouldn't be in great measure, I would feel it in some small measure. I have 2 children in private school, and the financial recession has taken an enormous toll on my family. My husband and I have joked for years that we thought we were well beyond the hot dogs and beans era of our lives. But quite frankly, it's starting to knock on our door and ring true that might be where we're headed again. And quite frankly, Mr. President, I need you to answer this honestly. Is this my new reality?
What I am saying is that we're moving in the right direction. And if we are able to keep our eye on our long-term goal, which is making sure that every family out there, if they're middle class, that they can pay their bills, have the security of health insurance, retire with dignity and respect, send their kids to college. If they're not yet in the middle class, that there are ladders there to get into the middle class if people work hard and get an education and apply themselves. That's our goal.
Question, why do Velma and people like her feel helpless while the political and business elite think everything is coming up roses? I ask you.
You know, that exchange was absolutely extraordinary, particularly if you know, people don't like to talk about it, but if you look at the aspect of race in this, you know, people went into 2008 believing that African Americans supported Barack Obama simply because he was black, and people have always assumed going into 2012 he's going to get 100% of the black vote. So for an African American woman to go out during this town hall meeting and publicly question the nation's first African American president about what is happening within her family, not just as a black family, but in terms of all Americans. And then you look at the fact that the unemployment rate for the majority of the country is hovering around 10%. In the African American community, it's 17%. It makes me wonder what's happening with Barack Obama within the black community, and what is his support going to look like in 2012. You don't have a lot of people talking about it, but I think that is critical.
I think the black community should be proud of this kind of reaction of this black woman.
No, I don't think it's a matter of whether or not the black community should be proud. I think that it is instructive for people who believe that Barack Obama will have the black vote simply because he's black.
You mean that when push comes to shove, he may not have the kind of black strength that he had going
in 2008 because people want jobs more than they want a black
There's
president.
something very ennobling about what she's saying.
That took a lot of courage, and she was spot on, because she expressed what a lot of this president's supporters are saying and feeling. But she went on in subsequent interviews to say she continues to back the president. But what happens is, if you have this lack of enthusiasm, people stay home, and that's what they're looking at
John,
in this. And so I think this
was
makes
a stab
it personal.
in the heart of Barack Obama. This is an authentic woman who, as you say, was really simpatico with him, defended him, probably loved him, probably was crying at the inaugural, and then she tells him this. He's got to go back to that White House, I think, and feel very wounded.
True or false? Majority Leader Harry Reid will be defeated by Sharon Angle for his Senate seat this fall. Yes or no?
You betcha.
He'll be defeated.
He will not be defeated.
He will not be defeated.
He'll be defeated.
He'll be defeated.
He will not be defeated.
He will be defeated. Bye-bye.
Geico, committed to providing service to its auto insurance customers for over 70 years. More information on auto insurance at geico.com or 1-800-947-AUTO, any time of the day or night.
There's a world of investment opportunities out there. Spotting them takes experts on the ground, assessing potential firsthand. Templeton, a pioneer in global investing for over 50 years. Gain from our perspective.
If. For such a small word, it packs a wallop. If I live to 100, if Social Security isn't enough, if my heart gets broken, if she says yes. We believe IF should never hold you back. IF should be managed with a plan that builds on what you already have. Together, we can create a personal safety net, a launching pad for all those brilliant ifs in the middle of life. You can call on our expertise and get guarantees for the if in life. After all, we're MetLife.